Hey, good afternoon to everybody here in the UK, or morning, evening, wherever you are in the world. And we are honored. You may have seen my friend here on Piers Morgan this week after appearing at the Diddy trial. And he absolutely navigated the week with finesse. It was a minefield. I mean, the scenarios that were described were just absolutely breathtaking. But Sharay here, aka the Punisher, just was very respectful, was very polite, was very authentic, and he absolutely just resonated. Such a likable person. So, I reached out and he's agreed to come on. His links are in the description box. He's got a book out. We will get to the book. That's a fascinating subject as well, about problems that men are going through, especially of the reproductive nature. And his Instagram is down there as well. So firstly, huge thank you for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure, man. I thank you for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and the other interviews you've done, they've just gone straight for the salacious stuff, the Diddy stuff. On this channel, we like to set the table a bit and get to know you a bit. Invest in who you are. So if we could go back to just find out, what was it like for you growing up? What were you like as a kid?
Man, typical. I had a young mother. So I grew up in a household with more like my grandparents as the parent figure, and they had a bunch of uncles. So it was a big family. And I was the only child. So the only child living with a grandma is kind of a sweet deal. You end up spoiled, you got that extra attention that grandma loves. So it was a pretty good childhood coming up in regards to just being around family and, that atmosphere. It was a good experience.
And was all this in New York?
Yes, I grew up in Harlem, New York City. Born and raised. I just moved from there recently, but I'm definitely a Harlem, New York City native.
Yeah, I lived in America for 17 years, in Arizona, actually. So, I got very familiar with Americans. And I moved there as a young person after I finished university. And I ended up in a bit of trouble, throwing raves and getting involved in ecstasy. So that's my backstory.
Nice journey.
that's my backstory in a nutshell. So, all right. So you're growing up in New York then. So what were you like in school?
Honestly, man, not a great student at all. I was into sports, so I was big into basketball. So I played on teams and stuff, but definitely not a diligent student, straight A guy or whatever. I kind of took advantage of having some natural intelligence. So I kind of never studied, did enough to pass, and kind of just really focused on sports.
So in school then, did you used to have dreams about, what I'm going to do when I grow up, that kind of thing?
After the hoop dream, of course, is the NBA. Everybody thinks they have a chance to a certain point. And honestly, when I came out of school, I went to college to be a teacher. Coming to school, I had some understanding about in inner city schools, some of the teachers don't really relate and give a strong push to educate the youth, especially in the Black community in Harlem or whatever. So my first job, I was an assistant kindergarten teacher.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. We've interviewed a lot of people who've, grown up, and there's been a lot of drug gangs and stuff in their neighborhood, and there's been a lot of pressure and danger. Did you find you had to avoid pressure like that?
Absolutely. Growing up in the late 80s and the 90s in Harlem, it was the heart of the crack epidemic. So it was very dangerous, very violent. It was normal to hear gunshots every night. It was normal to hear of young people either going to jail or murdered. And it was routine. It's obvious when you asked me earlier about my childhood, I speak to it glowingly from a family perspective, but it was such a dangerous environment that it became the norm. It was not a safe place. I just think I had a safe haven because I was really heavy into sports and I stayed on the basketball court. So it kept me out of trouble.
Were there any situations where, you thought you might be in danger, or any scrapes that you got out of?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I have a scar on my neck here from being just at a house party at 16 years old, and I come outside and it's guys from a viral street, and they get into an altercation with a friend of mine, and I get caught in the middle, and I ended up with a gash on my neck that could have, from what I understand, was centimeters from my jugular vein. So it was a rough area. You know, in the hospital 10 days. 10 inner, 10 outer stitches. And, but like I said, it was so violent, and that type of atmosphere was so normal. Growing up in it, it was expected. I didn't,
So till
I became an adult and removed from the scenario, I didn't really realize how toxic it was.
So when that incident happened, then, did you just go back to accepting this is the neighborhood, this is how it is, or did you have anxiety?
Actually, I went more dysfunctional, believe it or not. You know, you're in that 16, 17-year-old young man, testosterone type of ego trip. So my thought process then was like, well, look, I survived this, nothing happened. And it was kind of like a badge of, I guess I'm tougher, you know, look what happened to me. What's the chance of this happening again? And it kind of had some type of weird tough guy scenario that it put over me, but I was not a tough guy. You know, it's just, I'm glad that passed soon. But yeah, it didn't give me anxiety. It didn't give me fear. It was like a badge of honor. Like, look at my scar, like amongst the friends. Like, look, I was basically stabbed and I survived it. You know, like I'm tough. So.
Wow. Yeah, I arrived in Arizona in 91. And it was like 18th Street Gang and 7th Street and Fifth Avenue, all these different like street gangs. And then they had the Bloods and the Crips out in LA. How was it? How were the gangs where you were at? How was that organized?
So the gangs with me growing up had not yet really made it to New York City. It was more of, like you said earlier, it was the streets. You know, in Harlem, New York, there's housing projects, or maybe grant projects against Manhattanville projects, or 140th Street has issues with 155th Street. And so you had those type of dynamics, which I kind of avoided most of them because the basketball court was a safe haven. So everybody went to the courts. Games sometimes got, you know, a little out of hand or whatever, but I wasn't from a prominent street or whatever. So I was just, I played at St. Nicholas Park. I got known as Shorty St. Nick. And at some point, and you know, it gave me like a free pass because I was good at basketball.
So did anyone close to you at that age either end up murdered or seriously injured or go to prison?
I want to say as much as 50% of the guys that I grew up with.
What?
Yeah, that many.
So did that traumatize you, or do you just suddenly get used to it after you've lost so many friends?
As I started to mature, as I got into my late teens into my 20s, I kind of realized how toxic the environment was, and then I just completely removed myself. So I stopped playing basketball in the neighborhood. Like I mentioned in my testimony, I went down to West 4th Street, which if you're not from New York City, West 4th Street is like in the heart of Greenwich Village. So it's a safe area. You get people from all over that come to play. And I just kind of situated myself downtown and out of the neighborhood to try to avoid the negativity that was going on where I lived.
So did you have to stay on a fitness regime then? And did that mean, you know, staying away from partying?
Not necessarily. I've never been a big kind of social party guy. All my fitness came from basketball, and you know, I did get into weightlifting early just because trying to be tough, right? So the fitness came natural just playing sports. So I lucked out with good genetics, and it translated well.
So when you turned 20, what was your life like then?
When I turned 20, I was unloading trucks in a warehouse, trying to make a couple of extra dollars. I was in a long-term relationship with my high school sweetheart that ultimately ended up with me getting heartbroken, which catapulted me into being a male stripper.
Okay, what's that story? If you could give us in detail, that would be great.
Absolutely, man. I was with my high school sweetheart. I thought we were going to get married, you know, that first love of your life scenario. And ironically, she came home one day and said, I'm going to start working in the female strip club. And that's that. And of course, I had a heart attack. No, you're not. No way. And she was like, take it or leave it. So I did accept it, which was excruciating. Like, this girl I love, and she's working in the strip club, and I'm going through all this anxiety. And then it got worse, where she just came home one day and said, listen, I'm meeting all these guys and I'm tired of being tied down. I want my freedom to explore life. And she dumped me. And like any highly intelligent 19-year-old guy, my way of solving that issue was, I'll fix her. I'll be a stripper too, you know, and that's really what motivated, man. I went on this quest to become a male stripper to kind of hopefully I thought it would get my girlfriend back. Like, you know, if she sees me as a stripper and all the women are into me, maybe she'll want me back. And it almost started to work, where she did take interest and I want to come to the show. I want to check it out and see what was going on. So I thought I was making traction. She actually came to the show, met another stripper, and went home with him and broke my heart again. So it was a tragic scenario. You know, but hey, look, for the long run, it worked out, because that was what catapulted me into being a male dancer. And look, all these years later, I'm still involved.
How many years had you gone out with her then? We
were on year 4. It was a 4-year relationship.
Oh.
Yeah.
What was that heartbreak like?
It's excruciating, man. It changes you. It changes you. You know, as men, we're not good at this. You know, women have that extra understanding and that capacity to deal with and process their emotions in a way where I think they're way better at handling heartbreak. And men, because we're not supposed to be in tune with our feelings anyway, you just become coarse, rigid, you shut down. That relationship ended at 22 years old, and I don't think I got into another relationship till I was about 34.
So did she move out at that point?
Yeah. We went our separate ways. I ended up moving back home. She continued her dancing career, and you know, I delved into the stripper thing full force, just trying to make a name for myself. You know, as a young guy, you get into being a male stripper and you're walking to these clubs and it's full of women. It's like a dream come true. So it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all.
What is the protocol to applying for a position as a male stripper?
Well, now it's easier because there's internet companies where you can just go online. We have a contact form. You submit your photos, and if you have a good look and a good personality, you usually get a shot. When I started, you had to just beg. It was more of an underground thing. You didn't know where the parties was at, and every dancer is kind of like a freelance guy. You're not hired, so I would have to just show up and just beg to get on, and that was kind of my protocol.
so you're knocking on all these doors then. And like, what's the interview process? Do you have to like play a track, do a dance, answer some questions, fill out a form?
You have to lie. So nobody wants to hire a new guy, right? Nobody, right? Because you're inexperienced. So I was told, luckily I was started out by a guy that was pretty prominent in it. He said, look, man, we're going in there. Do not say you're a new guy. We're going to say you're a dancer from Connecticut, which is like a nearby state. And we're going to say you've been dancing out there and you're here. And I just showed up and just followed the suit with the false resume. And slowly but surely, they would throw me out there, and I kind of got the hang of it till I became good.
What would you say were the major challenges in attempting to get the hang of it?
So the major challenges truly is, as a man, a straight man anyway, we have no idea what is really sexy and appealing to women. You know, we just kind of throw on a song and just do whatever, you know. And what the most challenging part is realizing and getting an understanding what women view as sexy, what women view as attractive. You know, as a guy, you say, I got muscles. And you think, I got muscles, look at my muscles, you should like me. But it's more nuanced to creating a visual something that translates to what their fantasies are. And even all these years later, I'm still not completely clear, but the biggest thing is just finding your gimmick that works. Obviously, you got to have some degree of physical attraction at the baseline, but it's a certain way you move your body. It's a certain way you talk to them, because it's more than just moving. There's interactions, there's eye contact. There's all these little nuanced things that you have no idea are a factor, and you kind of got to just accumulate them over time.
So when you're starting out, do you have a choice of what music you're moving to?
Yes. Luckily, it wasn't like a go-go scenario. It was really a performance-based thing. So you had to make a show. So you had to make usually a 7 to 12-minute set. We started with an intro, a main song. You want to use popular music sometime that you know the crowd will react to. And I had to put together a whole gimmick. And with me, I went with the stage name Punisher. So I'm going to do my routine.
Oops, I think your internet's frozen. Sharay, can you hear me still? Well, if you're watching, viewers, this is absolutely fascinating. We're getting a whole other side to Sharay.
Did I get that?
Oh, yeah, you've come back. You've come back. Yeah, so you were talking about your routine, you know, how you stylized it.
Yeah, so I based everything around my character, the Punisher. So it was obviously a BDSM, S&M type of look, and it's obviously connected with sexual experiences. So I'm coming out to, I think my intro was "We Will Rock You" by Queen, and then I go into like a sexy Prince song, and I got a nice little niche, man. It's been working for me, you know. So I would have to say it was a pretty smooth transition once I got the character and some of the nuance down pat.
Yeah, my partner who I'm with now, who I've got a baby with, we met dancing to Queen. That was how we bonded.
Yeah, it's not a bad flow, man. It's universal appreciation for the Queen music, you know.
Oh, she's in the chat. There she is, Jen. Hi, Jen. So we've got almost 1,000 people watching live right now, folks, and you can get the book. It's the Amazon link is in the description box for Sharay Hayes, aka Punisher, and also his Insta. The links are in the description box. Also, his website is down there as well, and we are getting the full story of his life. This is absolutely fascinating here. What, you know, everything that led to what you guys have heard this week. All right, so you're starting out. You're in your 20s, and you said you're trying to like figure out what women like. What was the first time you actually had an epiphany in that area?
Literally, it kind of was a scenario where you're just trying to play for the crowd, right? So male dancing in New York City at this time was kind of like no rules, and not no rules in terms of interaction with women, but you could go on stage and get completely nude, you know? So they were underground events and very competitive. It would be 10, 15 guys on the lineup. And I just kind of realized that, and this is like trade secrets. I don't know how PG your channel is or whatever, but male dancers have an illusion trick, and it's called beefing up. And what we do is we get these, you create an erection prior to the show, and you can use, everybody in the sex store saw something called a penis pump. And I'm letting you know these things work. You know, if you use this thing, you put it on for a period of time, not only will it give you an erection, but it will swell up your manhood to like twice the size. I'm talking about a hot dog to a sausage, you know, like instantly. I'm talking about 20 minutes later. So the big gimmick with me coming up was I ended up buying one of these things, which made my size tremendously bigger. And then you get equivalent of a cock ring. So you create an erection, you put it on the base, and now you're walking around with this hoagie, you know, and this became like an attraction, you know. So then you put on these flyers and stuff, all these outrageous things. 12 and a half inches. And, you know, it sounds cringy and crude, but at that time, that was a draw, right? There was women coming like, no way, it can't be that size. And, you know, I already got this name, The Punisher. And you wear these kind of like G-string, these handmade G-strings that hang down halfway down your thigh, and they have tassels on them. And women is like, no way, you know, and you go out and you do a sexy routine or whatever. And at the end of the routine, you could go all nude. And it really made it look like you had some sort of Guinness Book of World Record a penis, and word would travel. Oh my God, you see the guy Punisher with the humongous, you know. So it sounds so in my 20s, having that gimmick and that reputation was pretty cool, you know. A little challenging when I got the girl home and the swelling went down, and she's like, "What happened to the?" You know? But for the appearance of the show, it worked good. Put a lot of pressure on me after the fact, but the illusion was fantastic. The illusion was great.
How can I can't even speak, man. You're killing me.
I'm Sky. Honest interview, you know. I'll give you the trade secrets, you know.
I won't be trying that at home, Jen. Sky has sent a question in. Is a hugely expanded appendage difficult to contain while dancing?
Well, the truth of the matter is, you don't want it to contain it. You want it to sway, you know, almost like a hypnotist, right? I want it to sway, and I want the crowd to be like they're in a tennis match, right? They go side to side, like this thing is amazing, you know. So I am not trying to. The more it is not contained is the goal, all right? We're not trying to contain anything. I want to give whiplash with the motion. You put on fast music, you kind of like sway it back and forth, and then the crowd's like, oh my God, that thing real? And, you know, that's the goal.
Is there such a move as the helicopter?
Dude, listen, absolutely. Absolutely. That was for the grand finale, you know?
I got a question from Jillian. Did you use elastic bands on your bits before a show?
Yeah, that's what I described. You know, you would use elastic. Me personally, I would get the elastic and I would get it cloth sewed around it. And that's what I would use for a cock ring. You're actually right on point, because the cock rings themselves, to keep it, you know, I'm out dancing, I'm not aroused. So you really have to cut off the circulation to keep your erection. So you're absolutely right. There were elastic bands wrapped in material. I'll tie it on the base, and, you know, then I'm salute 30 minutes straight.
Next viewer question. Did any of the audience members get too enthusiastic with you?
Yes. And I didn't think this was a real thing, but at times doing the show, and like I said, I would have this grand finale where I kind of like slowly pull it out and point it to the star and the stars or whatever. And women would literally jump out of their chairs and rush the stage and start throwing money on it. And you'll feel some hands coming out trying to grab it. And honestly, man, for a young guy, like an ego trip, being surrounded by women, like, holy crap, it was euphoric. Like, to, you know, obviously we have big stars in this world and they get on stage in front of millions of people. And I'm sure that feels crazy performing in audiences and arenas and stuff. But I got my experience like that. Maybe it was only a couple of hundred ladies, but listen, it was a big deal for me growing up. It was awesome.
So there's like a cliche, an old adage that says, you know, that men like to see the shapes and the visually stimulated, but women, they want the mind stimulated. They don't want to see all these dick pics and things like that. Are you saying that there's a variety of people out there? Let's just phrase it like that.
Well, yeah, no, I still agree with that, right? I don't think for women you're just gonna send them dick pics and stuff like that. They're not visually cued like that. So, but I'm doing it as part of a performance. So like I said, I'm coming out early and it's covered, right? It's all this hype on the flyer. Come see this 12.5 inches. So it's like, is it real? Then I come out in this exaggerated sock with tassels and they're doing the tennis match. Like, is this thing real? And I was fortunate enough that I could do a great routine, a sexy dance, and I'm not walking around nude. It's like a peak, right? So it culminates to this grand finale of the show, and I may stand on a chair on the stage, so I'm up in the air, and then I'm slowly pulling, and then comes out the lifesaver, and it's like, oh my God, it's real. And then I put it right back away because it's a tease, right? The key to it is strip tease. But that tease and that acknowledgement is like, holy crap. And it would create like a great scene at the end of it. So it was really the presentation and the build up to the climax that would get the response. I think if I just walked out with naked with it swinging, it's completely different. You have to be theatrical with your penis placement. You know what I'm saying? You got perfect time.
Did theatrical include various costumes?
So yeah, my costume was consistent to actually the photo that they've been using of me in the trial with the mask and the leather and stuff. That's how I performed. That picture was actually taken of me walking to the stage at an event.
Okay, you got a question here, reviewer. What was the weirdest interaction you ever had while performing?
So most of the stuff is typical in terms of just actual performing. This is going to sound like a funny story, an odd story, but one of the weirdest interactions I had was I went to a bachelorette party, and I would always tell everybody, if there's a room full of women, I'll say, put the bachelorette facing me as I walk in the room, and everybody else sit on the sides. And so I walk out to perform, and I have a mask on, so I can't see my peripherals. And I'm dancing in front of the bachelorette, and I hear all the yelling and screaming, and then the doorbell rings. And all of a sudden, it's like, I look around, and everybody left the room. It's just me and the bride. And what ended up happening was the food came. And literally, everybody at this party got up. Because it was so hungry, the food was late. Everybody in this party got up and just left the room and went to eat while I was performing. and this was early on in my career. And that was just like, man, I got to get better, because the hot wings was more impressive than me performing. and that always stuck with me, because whatever I was lacking at that point in time, my interest was lost just because the pizza came. So I always put like a chip on my shoulder, like, man, I gotta be better than the slice of pepperoni. So that's what to me as far as a weird scenario while performing.
So in terms of self-confidence going into this profession, then were you quite a confident guy, and did your confidence grow?
Yeah, my confidence grew as the reactions did. Coming into it, like I said, it was really spurned out of heartbreak. And I didn't have a lot of intentions of becoming great at it or doing something big. But once I got involved and I was getting a positive reaction, yeah, it kind of shot through the roof.
And these clubs, my understanding is that it's, you're prohibited to actually sleep with the people who come and attend the clubs. Was that the case in the clubs you were at? No.
I mean, nothing's going to go on in the club. But, when I started out, everything was freelance. So it was just like a party. The business that I run now and stuff, we encourage, obviously, no sexual or physical reaction in the club, or even if you're sent out to do a party. But there's still the ambiance of, once the show's over, if there's a genuine connection and she likes you and you like her, then obviously you guys can meet. And if it goes somewhere else, then that's just an adult choice, right? That's preference, but no sexual activity directly connected to being hired or performing at an event. It's just more a guy meets girl type of scenario.
So you said it was a while, before you got into a relationship, because your heart was so broken, and you described the shock of her going into stripping and then saying, she was meeting a bunch of men. So as you were stripping yourself, did you try and meet women, date women, and form relationships? And did they have the same shocked reaction back at you, thinking, how can I date a male stripper?
Yeah, it was challenging, man. I really think to this day, because I've never married and I don't have any kids, and I know for a fact that it was a byproduct of me choosing this as a profession. I met amazing women along the way, but I guess the pressure and the insecurity that comes with me going out every single week in a room full of women, and I'll be honest with you, in my youth, you feel entitled, right? You feel entitled. I'm meeting all these women. I had this dysfunctional thought process of I deserve to have my cake and eat it too. So I need to almost meet a woman that understands that I'm going to do me because I'm entitled to it, because I'm this celebrity, this inner city celebrity. And I had a terrible mindset in terms of connecting in relationships and finding a partner. So I squandered a lot of great opportunities with some amazing women.
So by the time you hit 30, where was your life at?
So 30, my life, I was doing very well. Like with the dancing, I'm business minded or whatever. So I saved money, I bought property, and I was kind of setting myself up for like a great future. And then I went through like a tough period of time. In my early 30s, my mom passed away. She passed away young at 47 years old. She had kidney complications. And me growing up in a macho male mind state, I didn't know how to deal with grief. And I want to say my mom, and literally 1 year later, my grandmother passed away from cancer. So these were my parental figures. And instead of mourning and dealing with it from a sensible place of just healing, I bottled it all up, and I just went on this quest of material, right? Making money and doing things financially make you feel better. And in that place of despair, I made a bunch of reckless investments and stuff like that, and kind of threw away all of the things that I built, just not dealing with grief and dealing with depression and stuff like that the right way. So it completely knocked me off my course.
My heart goes out to you, man. I can't imagine. So you said you were in your early 30s when your mum passed away. How did you hear that? And was it completely unexpected?
Actually, it wasn't unexpected, but I was in denial, right? My mom had been dealing with these issues since I was very young, maybe 10, 11 years old. So she went to dialysis 3 times a week. She was constantly in surgeries because with dialysis, they have to give you a port to perform the procedure. And over the years, it's connected to a major artery. That artery becomes ineffective. They have to move it to another artery. They have to move it to another place. And my mom ultimately just got to a place where she was running out of sites. She was running out of major arteries to perform the procedure. But I've seen her go have this surgery so many times. I kind of didn't see the magnitude of this is really a risk. So the very last time she went in, I had just a confident foregone conclusion, like, oh, it's just another surgery. She'll be fine. And when she didn't make it, it was like, wow, I wasn't mentally or emotionally prepared. It's amazing how sometimes men, and I can only really speak for men, but if you don't have that place of connecting to your feelings, you shut down a deep way. The day my mom died happened to be 4th of July. And that morning I went to see her in the hospital. And later that day, I went to a pool party. I was so disconnected from my feelings and my emotions that I don't think I processed these losses. My mom, my grandmother, I had a terrible breakup during the time. And I don't think I processed any of that till years later. I never really mourned, so it just threw my life in shambles other places because I'm running from the heartache,
Also, I think you were in shock and you went on autopilot, because my best mate died about 3 years ago. And I found out when I was on the way to film some podcasts, and I went and filmed those podcasts as if nothing had happened. It's like my mind wouldn't accept that he was dead. It just wasn't real to me. And it wasn't until days later it all started to kick in. And the realization, and you just thinking about all the memories and things like that. So did you have a period of reflection as well?
Yeah, but it really took me years. It took me years. I just kept running from it. I think I kind of had like an avalanche of bad luck with my mom, then my grandmother, and my girlfriend, and I had a long, like a close best friend that somehow we were falling out. I didn't even know, and so I had a loss of my circle like all at once. And my way was just trying to run from it and create success, but create success recklessly, which then, put everything else in shambles.
And a lot of people would self-medicate with substances and alcohol. Did you fall back on any of that? I mean, I've done a lot of that in my life.
Yeah, well, fortunately, I've never been an alcohol substance use guy. That got instilled with me very young. Growing up in the crack era and seeing how drugs decimated my neighborhood, I definitely got the Nancy Reagan "just say no" message, and I did avoid that. But like I said, my stuff was reckless spending, reckless things like that, and also, if I'm being honest, womanizing. Right, like as a man, there's this badge you get of conquest of women. It's dysfunctional, but it's something that's instilled in us in a young age. So now I want to just date. I want to go out. I want to have a good time. I want these things to fulfill what's missing. And luckily for me, when you fulfill yourselves with this pattern, this hamster wheel of a pattern, you wake up one day and say, no, this is not the way. This just makes you actually feel emptier.
Well said. Did you also find that throwing yourself into work kept your mind off your losses?
Yes, like staying busy is sometimes the best way to kind of block it out. You don't necessarily heal and you don't deal with it the right way, but in the moment, it feels gratifying because you don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. All right. So in your late 30s then, what was your life like then?
So, like I said, I went through this pitfall with bad real estate investments and mortgage crisis and these things like that. And then I ended up with another stroke of luck. My phone rung one day and it was reality TV. So I got called for a reality show called Megan Wants a Millionaire. I had previously was selected to go on one of the I Love New York shows. It was like a big reality show here in the States. It didn't work out, but the producers remembered me. So they called me for this show. And I went on this show, filmed. It was great. It led to another show, which was called I Love Money. And at the time, this was the most popular show on VH1 in the States. So I was feeling fantastic. I was like, oh, man, this is going to be great. I'm going to be on TV. This is going to, correct all the losses from the bad real estate investments and stuff. And it leading into, while my Megan Wants a Millionaire show was airing, one of the contestants actually did this heinous crime and he killed his wife. He had met a woman in Vegas at one of those weekend weddings, and the relationship was toxic and got out of hand, and he strangled her. It was like a terrible crime, so he wouldn't get caught. He pulled all her teeth out, cut all her fingers off, put her in a suitcase, and put her in a dumpster. And what he didn't realize was apparently she had breast implants and there's serial numbers on them. So they were able to identify the body. They chased him. It was this massive manhunt, and he ended up hanging himself. Now this is happening while we're on a comedic show that's airing. So of course the network pulled the show. The production company got a black eye of everything. So now the second show I'm on is airing, but it's never getting. But they're showing it 2:00 in the morning. And so this inventing of myself that I was expecting to get crashed and burned, and now I'm just completely depressed. completely depressed.
And I imagine now we're getting close to the time you get the call. Is it from Cassie?
Yeah, we're leading to that.
What led up to that then?
So again, coming out of the scenario, I'm in my late 30s, early 40s, and now I have to rebuild myself at 40 years old as a male dancer. So a way of rebuilding myself was, we're in an internet age now. Look, I can't really be dancing myself. So let me throw events. So I built the website, getpunished.com. I decided to market events, but you could also hire people for dancers. And doing that, I created web presence. So if you Googled male stripper bachelorette party, my website would come up. And apparently in the search, I guess, with Cassie and Mr. Combs, they Googled male dancer and my website came up and they ended up calling me directly.
Can you remember what was said on that call?
I do, kind of, because it was very typical. There were no cues from the call that I was going to see a celebrity couple or anything like that. It was just Cassie at the time. I didn't know who it was, but she just said, "Hey, it's my birthday. My husband said I can have an entertainer. I'm here with some friends. Could you do a party for us?" And I said, "Hey, no problem." The going rate at that time was $200. I was this close to giving it away because I was actually doing an event at the time. But when I was taking the information, they said Trump Tower. So if you're in the New York City area and it's a Trump hotel party, you know, that's an expensive hotel. You assume you're going to make a lot of tips. So I kept the party and I went there myself.
Could you describe what it was like arriving?
Surreal, man, because I'm expecting a room full of ladies. And literally Cassie opens the door and she's stunning, right? She's stunning, like in person. You know, you see people on TV and stuff and there's makeup and filters and, you know, stuff like that. But she's in person is flawless. I've never seen like a woman in person that striking. And she's in a robe and it's apparent that she's naked underneath. So it's a really like, what the hell like is going on? And, you know, very nice, very cordial, you know, big smile, inviting, "Hey, come on in." And I walk in and it's no party, no nothing, just a dimly lit room. There's sheets all over the furniture. And, you know, she immediately just tells me, "Hey, look, I don't want you to dance." She hands me a stack of money and says, "I want to create a sexy scene for me and my husband. Are you comfortable with that? We're going to sit on these couches and put oil on each other and do something sexy." And I had never been in a scenario like that, but it was extremely like wow and tempting, you know, based on all the attributes that was happening.
So you agreed to that then, and then are you brought through into the room where Diddy's is he in the corner?
He's not there at this time.
Oh, he's not there. Okay.
Yeah, so I was instructed to go in the bathroom and change to either underwear or a towel. And she showed me like it was like a couch set up, like a long couch set adjacent to like a single chair. So I was supposed to sit on the single chair and she would be on the couch across from me and we would create the scene. And she said at some point her husband, because at this time I didn't know who they were, at this point her husband would come in and to not acknowledge him, not to look at him, not to talk to him. We're supposed to act like he's not there and just create this voyeur type of scenario.
So are you intrigued but a bit apprehensive hearing all this because you've not done it before?
Actually, I have anxiety. I'm scared to death. You know, what I didn't get into earlier was some of the pressure of being this male dancer with the tennis match slong, right? It created sexual pressure, right? So this sexual pressure to perform and this expectation and stuff at a very early age, I started to be dependent on Cialis and these pills. And there was nothing wrong with me physically. I just had this mental worry about being able to perform and stuff like that. So by the time we get to this party, I understand that it's sexually suggestive and it could be a scenario where it goes somewhere sexy to a physical attribute, but I'm worried, right? Because the discomfort of knowing there's going to be a husband in the room and his reaction or whatever, I could not get in the moment. So I was dealing with anxiety thinking, hey, will I be able to get an erection? Will I be able to perform? Will this be something that I could succeed in? So I could not get into it. It was a severe place of worry, but I'm going to try to make it work because I got handed a lot of money. So it was very challenging to be in that situation.
So are you saying that you'd been taking these pills and they weren't working anymore, or you didn't take the pills on that occasion?
Well, no. So the pills had been working, But I didn't realize this plays into what my book is about, because my book is about my developing erectile dysfunction over a long period of time psychologically through different factors that a lot of men go through. If you have any degree of anxiety, it releases a hormone called cortisol, and cortisol restricts your blood vessels. So what ED meds do is they open your blood vessels. And so, but if you have anxiety, the cortisol closes them. I didn't realize this at this time. So I popped the pill the very first time, hoping it'll work. But the discomfort of the husband, Mr. Combs, being there created the anxiety. So the very first time I could not perform, which was fine, because the very first time it wasn't mandatory. It was create the sexy scene. I got an option of sex that I declined, right? Hey, look, I'm here for you guys. You know, that's my cover up, because I can't perform anyway, but I'm just here for you guys, and don't worry about it. Leave me out of it. But in terms of being called back, there was a clear expectation of sex, and there was always a challenge scenario for me, where sometimes I could, sometimes I couldn't, if I can just stay in the moment.
So was in the early occasions then, was Diddy always disguised in the same fashion, and what was that?
Yeah, his disguise was I don't know exactly what they call it. I hear burqa, I hear hijab, but it's similar to what the Muslim women wear, where their faces are completely covered and you can only see their eyes, which was a very odd scenario, because he would have that on but be completely nude. So seeing somebody completely nude with that veil on is it's not something you see every day, you know.
And you're a man who's seen many things. So for you to say that, you must be thinking, wow, this is like really out there.
Yeah. It was definitely a odd, weird factor for me and my experience. But again, I don't know who they actually are at this time. For whatever reason, I didn't recognize Cassie. And again, his face is completely covered, and most of the time he was across the room. And I can't look at him directly anyway, right? So I just knew, hey, look, you know, I'm charging $200 a pop. After that first occasion, I was handed $800, then an additional $1,200. So I basically made $2,000 for a baby oil massage. So it's like, hey, listen, man, and this woman's stunning, and I got to try to keep this going, because to me, it was a lucrative scenario in terms of making money easily.
So despite your mental anxiety on the first occasion, then, did you manage to get control of that for the as you progressed?
Yes, I did. And it would be based on momentum. So this scenario went across 2.5 years. So I could get calls multiple months in between. So it could be 4 months in between seeing them and doing this type of scenario. But when I would get seen, it could be like a Friday night, a Saturday night, a Sunday night, like back to back to back. So I noticed the frequency of the back to back. I can create some calmness, but sometimes going 6 months in between and just popping back up, it would start like everything would start over. So it was just really hit or miss. Like I even would say at sometimes, like, Dag, I wonder if they're gonna keep hiring me, because one day I'm good, one day not so much, you know. But you know, obviously in terms of creating what was wanted, it did last 2.5 years. So there had to be some positive thoughts about whatever interaction I created.
So after the initial occasion with the baby oil massage, did it then become a regular scenario that was just repeated each time, or did the scenarios vary?
They did not. It was very routine and methodical. It always started the same, with some sort of she's on one couch, I'm on another couch. We put baby oil on each other individually. We rub it on each other. It starts as a distant mutual masturbation, which then could become some type of touching and caressing, then leading into sexual acts of intercourse and oral sex.
And was the dialogue during this, or was it all done with music playing or silence? Or
Yeah, so it felt like acting in terms of with me and Cassie, like we were really trying to create sexual energy. So I'm following that lead, and most of the dialogue were subtle directions. I said this in my testimony from Mr. Combs, where he would say, you know, the rooms were like candlelit, or he's across the room and he may say, hey, move the candle to the side. Hey, why don't turn him this way, you move forward, she moves back. Like it was very, it's like a director, you know, a director setting the scene and the visual that he wanted. Nothing aggressive, nothing that seemed threatening or whatever, but it was clear this view or this look of the situation was going to be based on his personal preference.
So was he disguising his voice when he was giving you these directions?
He was not. He was not. But, you know, fun fact about me is I've been in clubs for the last 30 years. So my hearing's not great at all. So I did not make out what the voice, I didn't recognize it to a degree where I can say this is who it was. And naively, my initial meet up with them was, I was introduced to a married couple, right? So I believed they were married. So, of course, like anybody else, after the first couple of times, I'm on Google, like, who's this married couple? And obviously, Mr. Combs was not married. They were not married. So I'm going to draw a blank of him even being a possibility because I think I'm looking for a married person.
Yeah, it makes sense. A few people are asking about whether there was music playing.
Yes, at times. At times, they would put music in the background, all the same routine sexual ambiances that we've all created with the mood, some music playing, some dim lights, some candles. That was definitely the vibe, you know, added with a lot of baby oil.
Do you remember the preferred music they chose?
It was pretty much just slow, sexy R&B. You know, kind of like, you know, stuff like The Weeknd and Maxwell and, you know, these type of R&B mood setting music, you know. So it was typical setup. Typical setup. Yeah, I remember being younger, like having a girl come over, I got to put on my favorite track, you know. Got my little good time playlist, you know.
My partner Jen has just asked whether Diddy played any of his own music while you were in these scenarios.
He did not. I did not hear any Diddy music at all.
So once you were getting physical with Cassie, then how long did these scenarios last? How long were you present before you left?
Well, I was always there multiple hours aside from the first time, but the sex itself seemed anywhere between 25 and 45 minutes. They weren't extremely long sessions. The problem is I could show up at 2 a.m. and literally they would not be ready to interact to 6 a.m. So I'm literally just waiting around till I get a cue. So I was typically there 4 or 5 hours every single time, but the actual sex acts were only 20 to 45 minutes.
So Diddy sat there with his burqa. You're not supposed to be looking at him, and he's giving you directions, you know, while you guys are getting physical. And could you tell that he was physically enjoying himself from this?
Well, you know, as I testified to, the majority of time he's masturbating, right? He's masturbating, he's pacing back and forth, so he's pleasuring himself while watching. So that's my only cue to him enjoying himself, right? Whatever the sexual scene and stuff we're creating, he's giving directions, saying what he wants to see. There was times that I testified to where we're in the middle of an act, and this was one of the rare occasions where we moved from the living room into a bedroom, and he actually took a stack of $100 bills and he slammed it on the bed. And, you know, we both kind of reacted startled, and she turned to him and asked him, was everything okay? And he was like, hey, look, I'm enjoying this, you know. So I did get cues of him enjoying it through his self-pleasuring and him directly saying it at times. So that's what I would share in terms of that.
So I shouldn't be asking this, but a few people have put it in the chat. It was brought up at the court about his well-hungness or not.
So again, I'm not supposed to look directly at him. I'm definitely was not focused in that area. The only thing I will say, which was kind of the odd scenario to me, I already said I cannot hear well, and I could hear the masturbation from across the room, like it was it's like a flat, like I could hear it, you know. So it was very odd that you could hear like sounds of whatever stroke or movement he can do it, but there was a sound to it. And I thought that was, if you think about, if you're going to ask a question of somebody being well endowed, which again, I don't know, right? But you would assume this, I know when I use that pump thing to get the hot sausage over the Frankfurter, I know the extra skin and girth or whatever could create sound, right? So
wow.
That's the only way I can answer that. I did not look. I did not want to look. I was already having a problem with my own erection, so staring at another guy's beef was probably would not have been a good thing for me. So I can't confirm anything, but that's the most I can say to answer that question. I hope it was helpful.
Yeah, you're very helpful and very honest, and we appreciate that. I'm trying to. One side of my mind is not trying to think about this, and the other side of my mind is like, you got to ask a question, you got to think about this. But to be creating that much thunder, he must have been really banging his bishop from that distance. So, all right, so you've got a question here then. While using the baby oil, did you ever feel different? Like maybe it had other mind-altering ingredients in it?
I did not. I felt like I was in my stable mind the entire time. I'm not a drinker. I don't smoke or use any drugs or anything like that. So I was pretty much squared. The only thing I would say, and I don't want to imply anything, right, at all, but I usually have a pretty good memory, right? And I do realize that the majority of my encounters, I can't remember a lot of the details. Like I can't. Like, I don't want this to spin into any accusation thing. Somebody asking me the question, it just made me think a little bit more to it. But I know I don't have a lot of recollection. But my honest feel is that I was fine. There was nothing to influence me in it. And if there was something in the baby oil, I'm a stripper. I've been using baby oil all my life, so I don't think there was anything impactful. But that's a good, interesting question.
You had a lot of questions come in about Diddy's, whether he was, you think he was a voyeur, or whether you think that he wanted to join in with you. Questions along those lines. Any vibes? Did you detect any vibes?
So ironically, when we first began, and I did not know who he was, it was purely a voyeur type of scenario, right? Halfway through, when I actually found out who he was, I did honestly get paranoid, because growing up here in the States, there has always been rumors about Diddy's sexuality. Obviously, nobody can confirm it. I don't read into it too much, because even myself as a male dancer, when I hit my height of popularity, rumors came out that, questioning my sexuality. So I know it's something that comes along. But because the rumors were out there, I was actually paranoid. I write about it in my book, the insert that they're publicizing that I testified to. I say that my actual experience was, because I couldn't hear, he would give instructions, and his instructions may say something like, baby, I love that position you're in, right? But my paranoid mind with my hard hearing would hear him say, I can't wait to penetrate him. And I'd be like, oh my God, you know what I'm saying? So I was having all of these crazy, deaf, paranoid interpretations. Wondering if, hey, is this guy, like I literally write it, like, it's so bad, because I wrote the story extremely comical in my book. And I'm like, oh man, this guy, I said no names. This guy's going to see this, you know, but I'm like joking around, like, cause like, and so I did, I went through a factor like every single time I came wondering like, oh man, like if his sexuality is in question, will he, you know, make an advance at me? And if he makes an advance at me, oh shit, like, how am I going to handle this? You know, like I was definitely paranoid and worried that it could go somewhere left, but luckily it didn't. It didn't. So this is no verifying any part of Diddy's sexuality. We had no interactions, no nothing. Not one thing seemed gay or off. But because of the rumors, I was paranoid that it could go left.
So several of the viewers have asked if you could just go back and let them know how you found out it was Diddy and what year was that?
So this started in sometime in 2012, and I believe I did not find out to 2013. It was at least a year, 15 months into me having these interactions with them. And I found out by luck. Like I told you, I would wait around for hours. And in one specific hotel, they put me in an additional room. And while I'm waiting, I just decided to cut on the TV, and the hotel had a welcome message. And the welcome message was, the Essex House would like to welcome Mr. Sean Combs. And I was like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, no way. I felt like an idiot, right? Because I actually followed him on Instagram. I knew I'm a fan, right? And so, you know, I didn't obviously diligently look at his page, but the minute I saw his name, I was able to go. I'm his silhouette, like his complexion, you know, all of the things is adding up. And obviously now I see him in pictures with Cassie. So I'm like, dude, you're a dunce. A year later, you're just realizing who it is. But that's when the paranoia, that's when the paranoia kicked in. Because there was those questions of his sexuality.
So when you met them, after now realizing who they are, how did you not manage to give them a heads up that you knew? Did you have to like restrain? Was it like acting?
I played it cool, similar way, poker face. But I think very shortly after that, I think he kind of knew. I mean, I did leave the TV on. He might have went into the room, or somebody might have went in the room and saw, oh, wow, my name's on the TV. So eventually the next time he just did not have the veil on anymore, and he just had a baseball cap. So at some point I could actually see him peripheral. This entire time, I never had eye contact with him, which was odd. You know, I was asked on the Piers Morgan interview, he pointed out that literally the first time I had eye contact with him was after I testified leaving the courtroom. So that was kind of like, whoa. But yeah, I just acted normal, you know, back to your question, and kind of just went with the flow.
So when he switched from the burqa to the baseball cap, did his demeanor change, or did the scenarios change?
No, the scenarios stayed extremely consistent. Always, it was really a routine, methodical thing that happened every single time, as far as I'm concerned. You know, it was always baby oil leading to massages, to individual masturbation, to, you know, sexual touching, escalating to either oral and then penetrative sex. It was literally the same routine every time.
You're getting asked if the encounters were videoed?
So honestly, I don't know. I'd never seen a video or a camera or anything. I have heard secondhand that they do, that there was a habitual behavior to record these things. But I didn't, if I was recorded, it was done without me knowing.
So, you know, we've heard the grueling testimony from Cassie as to what she went through and the injuries and health problems she sustained. So a lot of the viewers are wondering, you know, whether there were any signs, or was Diddy loving towards Cassie? Was he brutal towards her? Things like that.
Yeah, so I didn't see a lot of their interactions. I even testified to this. When they would interact, there was like a cue during the sexual sessions. This was also kind of played into my maintain an erection and stuff, where we could be interacting, and right in the middle, he would just stand up and walk out of the room. And she would see this and get the cue, and then kind of like, we have to stop. And she would go out and she would follow him. And then they could be out 90 seconds to 15 minutes, you know, and then she'll just come back in the room and say, hey, let's pick up where we started. And now I'm supposed to just reboot, you know, and we'll pick up where we started. And then at some point he would casually come back into the room while we're in the mode. So there was a specific interaction between them, was always in a different room, out of my presence. And so I did not see any violence, any aggression. I didn't hear anything happen from the other room. It was just something I wasn't privy to.
Why do you think they left the room? Do you think they were partaking in substances and didn't want you to see that?
I can't really speculate. I thought I always just assumed they left the room for some sort of an instruction. And now in hindsight, I do understand that. I did see somewhere where Cassie said when she was done with an escort or a guy she was dealing with, they would have their own sexual play together. So I just assumed whatever they were seeing, hey, come here, I want to kiss you, I want to touch you, I want to whatever. And I assumed they were having some sort of intimate bond based on him maybe turned on from what he saw. So that was my speculation. I have no proof, but that's how I kind of viewed it. That was there some time for them to interact.
So Vanessa wants to know, in your scenario with Cassie, whether kissing was allowed?
In my case, there was no kissing.
And Tracy wants to know, did you ever start getting feelings for Cassie?
I did not ever start to develop romantic feelings, but I did have my own feelings of feeling special, right? When I was hired, it was told to me that I've truly believed that they were a couple, and this was just a kinky type of thing that they wanted to experience. And I ended up feeling flattered, right? Because I'm thinking, I'm the only guy. This is something they're doing. One of the conversations I had with her initially after the first time was she specifically told me, hey, I'm comfortable with you. I want to call you back. This is basically interpreted as this is okay. I'm okay with this. And me being the guy chosen, I'm like, wow, man, this, especially when I found out who it was. I'm like, wow, this beautiful woman, this billionaire boyfriend, this thousands and thousands of guys. And I'm the person that they're choosing to have this fantasy. So I walked around for years, literally right up to the allegations. And this was kind of like a secret badge of honor. Like, hey, I was chosen by this beautiful woman to be her boy toy, you know? And I naively really thought I was special. So the confusion of feelings, I never once thought, yeah, she's gonna leave her billionaire boyfriend for me. No, my ego's not that. It's not that out of control. But I did feel special that I thought I was a personal choice of hers to interact this way, and that's where the confusion of feelings might have came from in the testimony.
Did you ever confide in anyone, any of your friends, colleagues, when you found out it was Diddy?
I did. I told a handful of friends, like, man, yo, can you believe it? Like, this is what's going on. And everybody was like, no way, that's crazy. You know, it was like I said, it was like a badge of honor. I respected their privacy. I told only a handful of people, but the people who knew was just like, wow, man, like that's just such an amazing thing. And one thing about it that I think was verifying is sometimes you tell these stories to your friends and they're like, sure, yeah, I bet. And so the few people who thought I was embellishing or exaggerating or whatever the case may be, all of this coming out in this way, it definitely was a boost to my credibility, you know?
Of course, yes. So once you knew it was Diddy, then this is what this question is getting at. How would you have handled the situation if Diddy had made a move on you? Surely it would have been scary considering his reputation. So did you have to have a scenario in your mind where you thought, if Diddy does make a move on me, how I'm going to react in that situation?
Of course, man. I always played it to the degree of just, stopping whatever interaction and just firmly explaining that, hey, look, that's not my sexual preference. I respect whatever it is, but these are my boundaries, and if you're comfortable with them, we can proceed. And if not, this has to stop. I never played it out as it being some sort of large confrontation or whatever. My experiences up to that point had always been respectful and actually literally spot on to don't acknowledge him, he won't acknowledge me, we won't have any conversations. So I didn't think it would be something overbearing, but I did play in my mind, how can I respectfully decline, without being offensive or being confrontational.
So these meetings then, were they always in the same location or did they vary?
They vary between about 5 different hotels in the New York City area.
And what was the largest tip you ever got from them?
So it wasn't necessarily a tip. I only mentioned pay one time, and that was due to striptease in the beginning, $200. And, the first time, like I said, I ended up with $2,000. So I never even spoke about money again. I just showed up and took whatever they gave me. And it was always either $1,200 or $2,000. I don't know why there was a difference. I don't know why the amounts varied, but it was a consistent $1,200 to $2,000 every time.
All right. So how did the meetings wind down?
You mean how did they conclude, or you mean
yes?
So yeah, I testified to this. I was always instructed to finish, I guess, orgasm, right? But the orgasms would have to happen in a very specific way. So I was instructed to orgasm on the outside of Cassie's vagina area, like around her clit, her lips, whatever. So clearly on the outside of her. And that's how the sessions would conclude every single time. Similar scenario where I told you he would just pop up and walk out of the room. Shortly after I would finish, he would get up, leave the room. She would follow him out. Whatever happened after that, I don't know. And then anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes later, she would return, pay me, and then I would be on my way.
Okay, so the last session you did with them then, did you know that, were you put on notice or?
So the last session, I went in insecure. For this session specifically, there was a very long break between the last time I had seen them. And I noticed for certain because the last time I seen them was March of 2015. And June of 2014, I had an injury. I tore my bicep. So that injury, you're in a cast for 4 months. Then there's a rehab healing process. So it was at least from June to March of the following year where I hadn't seen them. We're talking 9 months or so. And in that period of time, I haven't worked out. I'm healing, so I went into the scenario a little insecure myself because I know I'm not showing up as in shape, as ripped, as muscular as I used to be. So there may be a visual dissatisfaction with how I'm showing up. And then on top of that, it's been a long period of time. And I told you when those long periods of times would take, it would feel like we're starting over all over again. So we got there, similar scene. And at this specific time, Mr. Combs was more specific. He would kind of just watch and give subtle cues. But this time, he kind of walked over in the middle of us doing some sexual action. And he kind of threw some condoms on the couch and was like, I'm ready to see you, F her. And, she's startled. I'm startled. That's pressure. And it just was not happening. I took the condoms. I'm trying to use them, trying to perform. I couldn't maintain it. That went on for some time. He walked out of the room. She left the room. She came back, instructed me to finish as usual, which I did that through some form of masturbation. They left the room again. She came back, paid me, but the conversation was different this time. The conversation was, hey, we just want to thank you for your privacy. We want to thank you for respecting our what we do and not sharing it. And it felt like a thanks for your service, where this will be the end of it. And so I felt it. I felt it because I couldn't perform. There was a lot of pressure. I'm not as in shape, and that ended up being the last time. So that's what I recall from my final interactions with them. And again, this is not confirmed, but I have believed it was my inability to perform and the fact that I wasn't as physically fit as typically when I would show up.
Yeah, one of the things that was shocking that Cassie said was, all of the health problems she had down there. And but it sounds like when you were present, they always insisted on using condoms.
That is not correct.
Okay.
Yeah. We use condoms maybe the first couple of times, and then it went to unprotected sex. And there would be a consistent conversation between me and Ms. Ventura where she would ask, hey, how's your sexual health? Have you been tested? I've been tested. You're good. So we did have those conversations. And again, I was in this naive place of thinking that I'm the only guy interacting. And I definitely irresponsibly caught up in the moment, started having unprotected sex. Actually, that was probably part of the reason why I struggled the very last time, because I'm expecting an unprotected sex scenario, as any men listening with aging and dealing with erection issues, sometimes a condom can be an obstacle, with trying to perform sexually in that type of scenario. So that added to the pressure and the anxiety when it was throwing some condoms and, hey, use these. So, but the majority of this time it was unprotected sex. And so getting the tidbits of all this stuff that she went through, I'm extremely grateful that her health concerns are not something she's still carrying, and that I didn't walk away from that scenario with any long-standing health issues.
So after that last meeting then, did you believe it was over, or were you still waiting for the phone to ring?
It was sporadic. I can't say I definitively said that was it. I didn't walk out of there confident, but you never know. I could have got a call back, but obviously it never came.
So was that disappointing then? Because were they your biggest clients?
Oh, by far. And yeah, it was disappointing because, like I said, I felt special. I felt until the allegations, until all this stuff came out, I really thought, hey, look, I was this special guy, this special opportunity. Even in my book, where I write about, obviously I didn't name them in the book or whatever, but when I conclude the story, I talk about it because it was written obviously before this stuff happened. I actually framed the story as I missed out on an opportunity. I missed out on an opportunity because I didn't understand that I had this psychological anxiety that affects your ED. And maybe if I knew this, I would have performed better and I wouldn't have lost this opportunity. So I really had saw it as like a unique kind of like pinnacle thing. It was like a pinnacle to my life that I had this opportunity. So it's kind of like really mind blowing to know that it was under a completely different set of circumstances, allegedly a woman being abused and taken advantage of, which just it's kind of heartbreaking if those allegations are correct, that I contributed to that even unknowingly. So it's not a great feeling, but it was just something I had no awareness of.
A few people are asking us to whether you ever had any other celebrity clients of this nature, or they referred you to any other friends or anything like that.
I did not. All my other dealings have pretty much been just male dancer parties and stuff like that. I've done parties where there's been prominent celebrities there, but really just the normal strip show stuff, PG entertainment, nothing that would translate into, anything close to this sexual interaction of this magnitude, just striptease fun.
Okay, so what year was the last meeting? And what I'm wondering what was the gap then between all this came out in the news?
Well, like I said, the last meeting was March of 2015.
15.
So yeah, so all this stuff, this stuff probably came out in the news, late 2023, maybe late 2020.
When you're seeing it start to build up in the news, what are you thinking at this point?
I'm just like, wow, right? Like, so my first thought process is whatever her accusations are is stuff that might have happened after we concluded. Because I'm still in this fantasy bubble that I was the only guy. So my immediate thought is, boy, things sure took a turn for the worse when I left the situation. So I'm naively not really reading into it to the degree that it actually is. And then as more details come out, I'm just like, whoa, like I'm just blown away because I was clueless. Like for somebody to be so intertwined to what was going on, I was completely blind to what the factual situation was. I really viewed it as a consenting couple just trying to do something fun and sexy out of the ordinary. And you know, for it to be all of this is just mind-blowing for me.
Yeah, so when you're seeing this escalate in the news, then did it ever occur to you that you could get snagged into some courtroom scenario and end up one of the most famous adult male dancers in the world?
Absolutely not. You know, so, you know, obviously when I describe my interaction, and as most people would hear, to me, and I don't have a legal analysis type of mind, right? But I don't see anything that contributes to these allegations. Again, I'm not an expert in this. So I remember my mind state when investigators first approached me. I felt like they were wasting their time. You know, my initial interviews with them was, hey guys, I'm sorry, I don't have anything for you. Like, you know, everything seemed consensual. The first people that contacted me was Homeland Security. So their focus is human trafficking. So I understand that it has to be a state to state thing. And I was like, hey, look, it was all in the same state. I lived in New York. I only seen them in New York. And so I assumed that my testimony was going to be insignificant. So it was really like, what is going on when I ended up being called to testify? I just did not think. I was in denial up into as early as a couple of weeks before I actually went on the stand.
Do they give you the option to testify, or do they compel you to testify?
They're definitely not an option. I didn't require for them to subpoena me. Because again, I'm in this naive kind of denial that they're never going to choose me anyway. So I'm just trying to be cooperative as possible. There's a lot of fear associated with what they call the Southern District of New York, right? I never got any pressure or fear from them directly, but when I would talk to my friends that are attorneys, I have a close friend that's a retired FBI agent. It's always, you don't want to mess with the Southern District. You don't want to be on their bad side. You don't want to whatever. Just do whatever they say. Just cooperate to the best of their ability. So I'm like, okay, I don't want to piss these people off. But, you know, hiddenly I'm saying, well, they're not going to use me anyway. So I didn't put any resistance, answered whatever questions. You want me to stop in for an interview? No problem. I'm going to tell the truth and just give you what I can recall to the best of my ability. So I'm still like baffled to how I really ended up there testifying. I hope that some legal analysis really breaks down what the significance of my testimony was that actually contributed, because I'm really not clear.
How many hours were you on the stand for, and what was it like arriving at the court that day?
So arriving at the court, so ironically for me, I went 2 days. So I ended up testifying on Tuesday, but they brought me there Monday. And I had to wait because they don't know if the people testifying before you are going to be quick, if they're going to, course exam is going to be skipped and stuff like that. So it's terrible, man. Like you feel like it felt like I was some sort of, like I was testifying for the mafia. You know, like they were going to put me in witness protection after. You know, they send 2 agents. They grab you, they put you in a car, they rush you in, like there's cameras out there, whatever, trying to film you. They rush you in, they put you in a room, they don't want you to interact, they don't want anybody to see you. And it just feels like, wow, man, it just feels like the weight of the world is on you. So, and now they take your phone, you can't talk on the phone, you can't do anything, and they just put you in a room by yourself, no TV, no nothing. And you're just sitting there for hours. It's terrible. And then I don't even testify the first day. So then they take me back home, and it's like, you're going to do this whole thing tomorrow. So tomorrow, same thing, agents show up, put me in a room, kind of lock me in there. And then I was almost like shell shocked originally coming in the courtroom to testify, because the procedure is they take you to one floor, they hold you there, and then right before you testify, they take you and they put you in another room right before you go on the stand. So I'm thinking I'm going to go upstairs and be put in the secondary room and wait to be called. And for whatever reason, the person before me went extremely quick. So I just came upstairs, got off the elevator. They walked me straight in the courtroom and put me on the stand. And I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm a calm, composed guy. But I testified cool initially, but I was in a full-on anxiety attack. I was not ready. I was on stage, like my hands were trembling. Like there's nothing you can do to prepare yourself for this type of environment. It was overwhelming. But I lucked up that when they first put me on the stand, it was like 15 minutes before lunch. So I started my testimony, and it was very brief, and then we broke for lunch. They took me out, and I was able to compose myself over the 30 minutes and then finish my testimony.
So how intense was the atmosphere in there?
Man, listen, it's really kind of indescribable. Like I first of all, watching court on TV and stuff like that, you picture a much smaller room, but this room is huge, and it's just rows and rows of attorneys, and I could not even find Mr. Combs. While it was just so many people. And the truth of the matter was I was trying to avoid eye contact at all costs. It was very intimidating. And because I don't know how this is going to go. And let's face it, I'm testifying for the prosecution, right? And even though I don't think my testimony is significant, like, who am I, right? They have me there for a reason. And so I'm worried that, hey, look, I'm a deciding factor in so many people's lives. And it's just a terrible place to be, man. It's a terrible place to have influence on people's lives to this degree. So it was very difficult.
Yeah, I think you said on another interview it was the first time you looked Diddy straight in the face. How did that feel?
Actually, I feel okay. I was extremely worried initially and all throughout my testimony. But what I can honestly say was, from the time this started, you're almost threatened, like forcefully threatened, that, look, as long as you tell the truth, you'll be fine. But if anything is false, anything, whatever, if you deviate, if your stuff is not consistent, we're going to prosecute you to the furthest of the law, you for perjury, this, that, and the other. So it's emphasized to just be honest. So I was able to go up there and honestly answer everything exactly the way I experienced it. After my testimony, after the cross-examination and the stuff that they cued on, walking out, I knew I just told the truth. I just told the truth, and I felt like I presented myself in a place where there was no bias. There was no pro him, pro her, anti him. It was just, this is the truth. And walking out, because I did feel like I presented myself that way, I became comfortable enough to look at him, and we had direct eye contact. I didn't know what to do, so I just nodded, and he nodded back. But there was no anger in his face or anything to that degree where, my hope is and even from, people that support Ms. Ventura and all of the other victims, I just hope I'm viewed as somebody that just came up, told the truth, and I can't really go past that, right? The truth is going to always be the truth. And that's what I just tried to do.
How did it feel to see Cassie again?
I actually didn't. I didn't. She's not in the apparently he's real far along in a pregnancy, so she's not sitting in the courthouse.
Oh yeah, of course. Did Cassie ever communicate with you about any of this?
She did not. The last time I spoke to her or Mr. Combs was when that last time in 2015, where I had the interaction, and that was the last time any speaking or interaction took place between them.
So what was it like then when you're coming out of the court? You've got all this stress off your shoulders now. Did you just feel completely relieved?
I did. I was so happy it was over. It was kind of like the officers and the agents did a good job of avoiding me from the chaos, in terms of there was just cameras and they would run up and surround you. And I don't know if you saw some of the other people leaving the courtroom. They would yell out disrespectful things to try to trigger and create some sort of, I guess, clickbait reaction. And I was lucky enough to avoid that. They were really good getting me out, getting me into a car, and I avoided the chaos outside. So I was just happy it was over and was just trying to get home and get some sleep. But I still haven't gotten any sleep because it's a constant, right now I'm doing what I feel is damage control, and my damage control is, listen, I've been a male stripper. It's not the most glamorous title to have, but it's one I'm comfortable with. Being involved with this trial, I unfortunately went from a male stripper to a male escort. So now I'm known across the world as a male prostitute. And, obviously I indulged and I was propositioned, but this was something that I never did or promoted or made a scenario for me to make money. And it's just, those titles come with expectation and the idea of your mentality, or your, maybe people think you're a douche or a bad person. So I want to thank you for just this opportunity to present myself as the real person I am. And maybe people can see past the titles and say, okay, this is just a nice guy that was maybe a little bit too much of an opportunist and just got himself into a situation. And it's not a label I carry with me for the rest of my life, is the ugly stereotypes that come along with what I do for a living.
Yeah, the people in the chat, they were all on your side, man. They're just saying how down to earth and honest you are, and that just shines from you, and we salute you for that, because it's been such, the scenarios were so extreme. I think it was on Piers Morgan when he said about something being normal. And then you corrected him. I thought that was quite funny. What was that like going on Piers?
I thought it was great, man. I thought it was great. I knew there was going to be some challenging questions, or people are looking for the splash, right? The splash narrative. And unfortunately, I don't have one. I don't have one. I don't have the soundbite. My story is what it is. My involvement is what it is, right? And I'm only going to tell it like it is. And like I experienced it. So, it's tricky with navigating, people trying to push you into a conversation or a statement that creates some sort of splash. But I think I've been doing a good job not stepping on the landmines,
Yeah, absolutely. You're doing phenomenal. My partner just sent me a message. She said she's bought your book. You're #1 right now in men's health in the UK on Amazon.
Oh, wow.
And
that's awesome.
When did you start work on the book?
So I started working on the book September 2022. It was literally after a very bad breakup. I went through a terrible breakup where I was betrayed by a partner, and she told me her betrayal of stepping out was motivated by my lack of sexual performance, which is something tough to hear. Right. And me hearing that completely, for whatever reason, psychologically or whatever, I went months. I could not get an erection. And so I went looking for ways to try to cure it. And, I found out that there was nothing physically wrong with me. It was all psychological. And then going further into looking into it, 50% of ED cases are mental. And there's men walking around just with anxiety, just with shame, just with low confidence, struggling sexually and trying to cure their mental issue with physical fixes, popping pills, getting some of these crazy procedures that's supposed to create circulation and stuff. And we're really being taken advantage of, right? Because, ED is a place of shame, and it was so bad for me that to correct my mental issue, I went as far as getting a penis implant, which is a drastic measure. And I don't regret it, but it just shows that when you're struggling in this place of sexuality and men, there's no place for us to discuss it. It's hard to talk to anybody. It's just so much shame. There's no tools or resources, and you can end up doing drastic things to fix it or just give up on it altogether. So I decided to write this book. Almost every guy I talk to, because nobody wants to talk to it out loud, but when I'm honest about it, I get all of these, you know what? I'm struggling too. A lot of guys will confide in me. I ended up talking to my dad. He was struggling. He went and got an implant. He's 70 years old. Now he's happy. He's living his life, and he's not exactly necessarily a ladies' man, but it's just that struggle is difficult for a lot of guys. So the book has a crazy title. It's called In Search of Freezer Meat. Freezer Meat is a play on an erection, right? I tell a story in the book where I'm in the Caribbean with a girl and we're messing around and she reaches down to see what's going on with me. And literally she touches me and she says, "Oh my God, this thing is hard as freezer meat." And it was like a euphoric moment for me, and I play into how, that being affirmed that way, right? Just getting that confidence from a woman, confirming that. For the rest of that trip with her, I went from somebody who was struggling with erections to having no problems, So it's just a lot of my personal stories that lead into remedies that men can use and causes and effects to consider if there's something you're going through. And I think it's also good for women to read too, because we all know that couple that's in a sexless marriage or they stay in separate rooms and you wonder like, wow, why are these people not intimate? And quietly as kept, you automatically think there's some sort of tension, but men and women are always going to argue and not see eye to eye. That should not mean your intimacy completely shuts down. And I do believe that there's a lot of men in these scenarios that are struggling with their sexual confidence, and they just let this situation persist because I'd rather not have sex than fail at it. So I just wanted to have a bigger discussion about how it affects us mentally and emotionally and affects our marriages. And for men, it affects our confidence, how we feel about ourselves. And it's a lot of dysfunction in terms of how we view sexuality and our value as men. So the book just covers those type of things.
Good for you, man, because not many people are prepared to go there. Michelle is wondering, how does the implant work?
So it's technology is just amazing, right? Because there's, I'm currently, before the book was released, I currently have been dating and seeing whatever, and no woman has any idea. It's the way that a penis works is an erection is caused by, let's call them cylinders, right? On either side of a man's pee hole, there's these cylinders called a corpus. And that's what fills up and lengthens your penis to then have an erection. What the doctor will do is he makes a small incision, believe it or not, in your testicles, and he can access the bottom of this corpus, and he puts 2 cylinders in. So these cylinders go the length of your penis, and he connects them to a pump that goes in your testicles. So a man's testicles will feel like he has 3 testes. You usually have 2 testes in there. It feels like you have 3. Very inconspicuous. And that pump is connected to a little reservoir that is placed by your bladder. Apparently, we have some space in our bladder where you can put the reservoir. And you cannot see it. You can't anything. So in the process of about to have sex, I kind of reach down and just grab my testicles and give it a few pumps. And this will put the fluid in the cylinders, and it gives me like a natural erection. And it feels natural. You cannot see it. You cannot no way to be accused. We're telling this, you might be accused. So if you ever touch a guy's testicles and feels like he has 3 testes in there, you know what's going on. So, but really, you do not know. And it's literally the best erection you will ever have in your life. As a man, you think back to the best erection you ever had. This is what you get every time, every single time, but with unlimited stamina, because it does not go down until you want it to go down.
Wow, you got a few people asking what your profession is now, and if you're available to do the helicopter still.
Well, my dancing days are kind of behind me, and also, you know, the story I talked about, the helicopter and going on nude, that was very, very early days where dancing was not regulated, and you were kind of in these rental halls and there was no rules. Right now, it's very cleaned up. It's down to underwear. You ain't seeing no helicopters and no lifesavers, or, you know, no tennis matches. You know, we got to clean it up. You know, it's a PG show now.
Sharay, huge thank you, man. Like I said, everyone is just like loving you in the comments here, how honest you are, and how you've really just laid your life story out so everyone can see how you got into this situation, which we've not heard before. And we commend you for just handling everything so sensitively and respectfully. You know, when you were talking about Cassie in particular, after all of the horrors that she's gone through, and you've been very generous with your time. You've spent an hour and 40 minutes with us presently. Wow. Is there anything? It's gone fast. So you've been fascinating, and we've interviewed a lot of people. Is there anything you would like to say in conclusion to the viewers? And all of Sharay's links are in the description box, folks, and I'm putting them in the live chat now. The book, the website, is Instagram.
So look, I just want to say thank you to everybody, anybody who's watching, especially people who, you know, took the time to see me in a different light and have positive things to say, and even people who don't have positive things to say. I'm grateful for it all. Like, to be in this scenario and thrust into this type of popularity and limelight, it's just something you have to be grateful for. I mean, it's an unfortunate circumstance around it, but hey, listen, you know, we're all a sum of our choices, right? And I made some choices. It landed me here. It's what I'm going to have to deal with, and I'm just glad I'm able to, you know, present myself in a way where some people see me in a positive light. I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to present myself that way. And shameless plug: In Search of Freezer Meat. Pick up the book. I think I think it'll help couples. I think it'll help people. I think it's a fun, hilarious read. I wrote a lot of funny stories about my life, and I appreciate the support. And thank you.
And viewers, my partner Jen has bought the book already. Well, Sharay's been on the air. I don't know what she's got planned for me, but huge thank you for coming on. Much love and respect from the UK. I'm going to let you go and close the show, and you take care of yourself, my friend.
Thank you again. It was a pleasure meeting you. Pleasure talking to everybody, and thank you so much.
All right. Cheerio.
Take care.
What a phenomenal guest. That was so interesting. I'd seen all the other interviews he's done, you know, where they just jump on what happened at the trial kind of stuff. But his life story, mind-blowing. You know, growing up, you know, losing his mom, losing his nan, heartbreaking. And he's just such a positive guy, trying to make changes in the world regarding men's health, which is often overlooked. These are the things people are uncomfortable to talk about. So if you can support him, his website is down there, his book, even just give him a follow on Instagram. And we've got another person close to the Diddy case coming on tonight, who was on Piers Morgan, but we had him on before Piers earlier in the year, and that's Big Homie CC. So Big Homie CC, he's coming on tonight at 9 p.m. UK. Celebrity Bodyguard. He's going to be talking about protecting our own, the cabal, and global evil. Ron's coming on in 20 minutes with a story, Real Mothers, Heartbreaking Testimonies, Victoria Haig, Part 2. And then some of you may have seen Seth on Soft White Underbelly. He's a survivor, another heart-wrenching story. And we've got Seth. He's going to come on at 9 p.m. tomorrow night. And I'm going to be reaching out to Hashimoto and also to Lionel as well, and see if we can get some of the usual suspects lined up to talk about what's going on in the world, geopolitics, Diddy trial, etc. But I'm about to go to dinner with Andrew Gold, the Andrew Gold podcast I did that's on his channel. Last time I looked, it was at about 120,000 overnight. People really enjoying it, in which I expose the network from Diddy, Savile, the Clintons, etc. So if you've missed that one, check it out. Oh, thanks, Jen. Love, big homie, indeed. So much love wherever you are in the world. We've got at least 4 more hours of content this evening. So